Welcome to another installment of the Cisco WebEx Meeting Server Configuration Training Series. My name is Dan Jordan, Technical Marketing Engineer for CWMS. In this video, I'll walk you through deploying your CWMS OVA onto VMware ESXi. Before we get started on the deployment, I wanted to share the current requirements for the different deployment types available for CWMS. This table explains some of the common requirements across all the deployments as well as specifics for each deployment size. For this video, we will be deploying a 50-port system with an IRP on a separate ESXi host. Please pause the video if you need any more time to look at the requirements. Before we get started, I want to say that I am assuming that you already have ESXi installed on your host and have vCenter configured with the host as part of your data center. You also need to have the actual OVA file on the workstation that you're using to access vCenter. So from the file menu, we're just going to go ahead and choose Deploy OVF Template. Go ahead and browse to the OVA. And when you click Next, you're going to get an information screen that will give you the size of the OVA, the version, and the size on disk. Go ahead and click Accept for the EULA. And next, we're going to give the VM a name. If this is your admin VM, go ahead and name it something along those lines. The next screen here is important. This is where you're going to select the deployment configuration or the size of the system. This is also where you're going to select the option to install a reverse proxy machine if you're adding external access after the initial deployment. You also notice that it's going to explain the different VMs that are included as part of each deployment type. Again, we're going to be deploying a 50-port system, so we'll select 50 and click Next. On the next page here, we're going to select the type of storage provisioning. Version 1 is only going to support certain co-residency configs, so you should be fine using thick provisioning. If you want a detailed description on the different modes there, go ahead and check out the vSphere 5 documentation. From here, select the VM network that you want to use with your virtual machine, and then go ahead and put in all the networking properties, so host name, DNS, IP information, and then you're going to have language at the bottom as well. When you're doing this, make sure that you are entering the correct information and make sure that DNS is already configured. If DNS is not configured and you jump on to the next step and have this information wrong, the deployment will fail. Again, you get one more chance to verify that your information is correct, and you also get the option here to power on after deployment. Go ahead and click Finish. At this point, your OVA is being deployed, so just go ahead and wait for that to happen. It could take 20 to 30 minutes, sometimes more. So at this point, we'll go ahead and just jump ahead and open up the console once it's completed deployment. And you'll see here that it's running through the normal post. And at this point, we'll actually see the system go out and verify the network settings. So again, if anything was incorrect here, if DNS wasn't set up, you will get a failure there instead of a success. Now once the deployment bar fills up, you'll be presented with the configuration URL. Go ahead and write that down since you cannot copy it from the console. So in our browser, we'll go ahead and navigate to that configuration URL. Again, it is case sensitive, so be aware of that. And once we've correctly entered that, then we'll be at the first screen of our configuration page. Go ahead and select your language. And again, you'll have the option here to switch your system size. Again, we're just going to do 50, so we'll just go ahead and hit Next. If you are going to be deploying a high availability system, go ahead and choose that here. Again, you can come back and do this at a later time. In this instance, we're just going to go ahead and do the automatic deployment, and then it's going to ask us for our vCenter information. So the URL, username, and password. Again, note that the user that you use here must be assigned the privileges to deploy, configure, power on and off, and delete virtual machines. And then you'll see in a minute here why we actually pull this vCenter information in. And once it successfully makes a connection to vCenter, you're then going to be given the option to create an IRP at the same time. In this case, we are going to do that. So we'll go ahead and put the check mark and click Next. Now again, you see here that this is where we actually get that information with vCenter. So you're going to want to select the host that the IRP is going to be on, the data store, and then also the virtual machine port group that it's going to be on. On the next page, we're going to go and put our networking information in for the IRP. And if DNS is set up, this will actually pull back the IP address. So that's why that's grayed out. Before we jump on to the next section, I wanted to explain with a few slides the different DNS options that we have available and how you would set each of those up. The first slide here shows the IRP inside the internal firewall. You'll have a unique IP address for each VM, and then note that in the 50 port system here, the media and the admin VM are the same VM. Then you also have a public virtual IP and a private virtual IP. In the case of split DNS, you're going to point all internal requests, and that's both for admin and users, to the private virtual IP. All the external lookups are going to point to the public virtual IP. The second slide again is a split DNS configuration, but with this time with the IRP and the DMZ. So you do have the option to either deploy in the DMZ or deploy the IRP in the internal network. The difference being the ports that are going to be open on the external firewall or the internal firewall. Now in the case of a flat DNS configuration, it's going to be a little bit different. So the user site is going to point to the public virtual IP, and the admin site is going to point to the private virtual IP. So one other thing to note in this configuration is that all user traffic will flow through the IRP. So ensure that the firewalls are spec'd out to handle that traffic. So now that you understand the public and the private IP, let's go ahead and put that in. So in this case, we'll go and put our public virtual IP in first. I'm going to put the private VIP in second. And then you're going to go ahead and select the site URLs. So the first site here is going to be the actual URL that users are going to use when they want to join a meeting. So in this case, we're just going to use meetings. And the WebEx admin, again, you want to make this probably something a lot different than the user URL, just so that makes it tougher for people to find it. For this lab, though, we're just going to use meetings admin. Also, you'll notice on the side there, if you do have any questions about which one should be pointing to which one in terms of your DNS config, it's also going to specify that over to the right side there. Once that completes, you'll get the option here to look at the networking checklist. And once you click next, then it's going to actually go out and deploy. In this case, it's going to deploy our IRP. This part may actually take a little while, since we are actually going out to vCenter and basically deploying another OVA. So you can actually keep an eye on it through vCenter, but we'll go ahead and skip past this part. And once it actually deploys and we can actually connect to it, you'll get the check marks there. And then we go into a system check. So in this case, we're basically checking the all the specifications. We're checking the connectivity. So this is going to give you some errors if it finds anything incorrect or not working. After all the checks have run, then it'll basically present you with the screen that gives you the URL to actually go into the final piece and do the last couple of things, setting up an admin account, and you can actually copy this URL. So go ahead and copy and paste. So the first section in the configuration here is going to be your mail server connection. So you want to make sure that this is correct. If the system cannot send an email to your admin account, then you will have no way to log into the system. So make sure that all this is correct, and make sure you use an email address that is valid. So it's at the bottom there. I've also put the email address that the message is going to come from. So ensure that on your mail server that it's allowed for someone to send from that address. So we'll go and put in the host name, whether you've got TLS enabled, and then also whether you have server authentication enabled. On the next screen here, just go ahead and set your time zone, and then your locale. It's going to ask you to confirm settings, and then it's going to ask you to set up your first admin account. So just go ahead and put in the first name, last name, and then email address. Again, make sure that this email address is valid, because the only way to get into the system is to have a valid email address. And then once this completes, the admin will get an activation email to go ahead and change their password and log into the system. So we'll go ahead and jump over to the email client here and show you the actual email that you'll get. So you have a big green button there that says create password. Go ahead and click on that. And once the site actually comes up, you'll go ahead and choose a password. And you'll notice the default password requirements over there. And from there, we're presented with the sign-in screen. And once we've signed in, we'll be presented with the dashboard of the system. And there you see we've successfully deployed and initially configured our Cisco WebEx meeting server. Now, if you did deploy the IRP during the initial deployment, if you go into System, you'll actually be able to see that public access has a yes. If you did not do the IRP, that will be no. You can also go into View More, and you can actually see the IP address and the status of that server as well. That will conclude another VOD in the Cisco WebEx Meeting Server Configuration VOD series. Please check out the community for more information, post your questions, and find more videos. Thanks for watching.